next topic I really want to talk about, and that's around the issue of restraint. So I had a look at Anna, case study number 2. So Anna's an 82-year-old widow with early onset dementia. She's been living at Waterview Aged Care for 4 years. She loves talking about golf and gardening. During the day, Anna weeds and hoses the garden while telling fantastic stories about her golfing days to anyone who listens. As Anna's dementia worsens, so does her memory and gait. One day while she's hosing, Anna trips and falls. She gets a large cut on her scalp which needs stitches, and she gets a black eye. Staff think she might break her hip next, so they give her hip protectors, and the manager tells them to supervise Anna whenever she gardens. Anna refuses to wear the hip protectors, and she's unhappy with staff telling her when she can go outside. Because her short-term memory is poor, she forgets to tell staff when she wants to go into the garden. She keeps gardening until she has another fall. She breaks her hip and tears the skin on her arms and legs. Fearing she'll injure herself again, staff put Anna into a chair with a table insert to stop her walking, as often as she has in the past. Anna's very agitated, her dementia worsens, and it's harder to understand what she said. Staff member speaks to Anna's doctor about these changes, and he prescribes a tranquilizer. Over time, she stops talking altogether and sits motionless in the chair for hours. So, does someone want to maybe throw up some ideas about what kind of restraints we're seeing?
Physical restraint.
Yeah.
Putting the chair in front of her.
Yeah, exactly.
Personally, how would you?
Yeah.
So, talking about the issue of restraint, so I thought we might start by talking about what are some other kinds of restraints. I mean, obviously we've covered a couple here, but what are some examples of restraints that you guys are aware of or have seen? Or
Well, I can see like emotional restraint in here in a way, like staff are refusing to allow her to do what she wants to do, sort of thing.
So it's sort of almost verbal. It's discouraging her from doing what she wants to do. Yeah, and I think we see that reflected in, I'm sure you guys have all seen this decision-making tool. Is this a document you're familiar with? It's a department document around the issues of restraint. If not, I would suggest you have a look at it. I'll leave it here so you can have a look. But they provide a few definitions of what's restraint. And that includes obviously physical restraint and also real aversive treatment practice, person-to-person restraint. So it's the control of the resident's behaviour through the use of physical force or hands-on, no matter how gentle hands-on is. This is a form of restraint that limits a resident's mobility. Verbal, any commands or threats that are used to limit a resident's mobility. So perhaps the staff telling her she's not allowed to go outside, that's a form of restraint. And also psychological measures, any measures that create a belief that act to limit a resident's mobility, e.g. placing tape across the doorway. So that's the department's definition of what a restraint-free environment is. So it's really any words, devices or actions that will interfere with the resident's ability to make a decision or restrict their free movement.
So it's locked doors?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it could be. That would be probably an environmental restraint.
Yeah.
So really, the restraint is a legal issue because I think we were speaking before about the importance of autonomy and liberty is another fundamental principle of our legal system. And any interference with a person's liberty is unlawful unless it's authorised by law. So the common law has developed causes of action. For example, you might hear the words every now and again, habeas corpus. It's often used in the context of asylum seekers, and I think it was in the Cornelia Rao case as well. So that's where, and it's basically an action for false imprisonment by a government or other authority. So deprivations of liberty are authorised by law in some circumstances, such as when a person is apprehended or arrested by police, or sentenced to prison by a court. Some deprivations of liberty are also authorised by legislation in health and disability settings, such as decisions by an authorised psychiatrist to detain a person with a mental illness in an approved mental health service, or decisions by the Secretary to the Department of Human Services to authorise restrictive interventions on a person with an intellectual disability. There are different requirements for authorising restraint depending on the state or territory that you're in. However, I think what's key is that a person can't authorise restraint without lawful authority. So I think this brings back to what you were saying before around someone with power of attorney. Unless someone has that authority, they can't authorise restraint. And I think that's really important to remember. So if you get someone coming into your facility and the family say, yep, we want to have bed poles, for example, that is a form of restraint, as I'm sure you're all aware. And unless they are a legally appointed power of attorney, actually probably be what's called an enduring guardian, or they've been appointed as a guardian by VCAT, then you don't have that authority. You can't rely on their authority, otherwise it could be unlawful. You might actually, in some cases, if there is no one with that authority, go to VCAT to seek that consent.
So with the ideas like locked doors, you don't have to push buttons to get through, is that considered restraint or?
Yes, it is, and I was going to deal with secure units specifically. Oh, I might actually just skip forward to that. So I'll just around this decision-making tool has a lot of guidance around the use of restraint. It emphasises that it really is a last resort, and that and it gives a whole lot of examples of what restraint is, and also about how you can actually promote some alternatives to restraint. The department, as I said, this is for them the key document, and if you're not complying with this document, then the use of restraint is not only potentially a breach of that person's human rights, but it's actually a compliance issue, and it could come up in accreditation or if there's a complaint. So it really is important to follow not only the law, but also be aware of that document and follow that to the best way you can. So if you are going to use restraints, you want to have trialled the alternative strategies, and they give quite a long list of things there. You know, environmentally improved lighting, lights that are easy to use, non-slip flooring, carpeting in high-use areas, ensuring a clear pathway, reducing environmental noise, and then there's also having activities and programs, so to prevent the person from, to keep them engaged. Alterations to the nursing care, knowing the resident as individuals, increased supervision and observation, increased staffing levels, difficult sometimes, I can appreciate, having a structured routine, better communication strategies, and then also psychosocial programs such as companionship, active listening. I'm sure you've covered quite a few of these in this course, so probably telling you all the stuff you know. But just, yeah, maybe have a look at that guide and be aware of those, because if the department or the agency want to come knocking, then you can say, well, we're following this. So I think that is important. But I'll move on now to the issue of what you spoke about before, which is around, those are just some questions if you are using restraint on someone, and sometimes it is necessary, but just also always be mindful of, you know, asking yourself why you're using it, what are the alternatives, is it the least restrictive, how's it going to be monitored to make sure they're comfortable and safe, and how long are you going to use that form of restraint for. Should also be very definitely documented properly. So now moving to the secure units, we'll have a look at our severity part 2. So following his wandering incident, the Waterview staff moved him to a secure unit in the facility. They also do a more comprehensive assessment and implement behaviour management strategies. So he appears to be having hallucinations associated with his PTSD, so his GP prescribes some antipsychotic drugs. A side effect of the drugs is that they make Bernie sleepy, which helps keep his wandering under control. One day Bernie falls asleep at the table and he slips down and injures himself. So we've obviously got here two forms of restraint, and that's the secure units and also these chemical restraint. I would say though, often what we've seen in accreditation audits sometimes is you're chemically restraining residents. Provided that medication is prescribed to treat a condition, it's not chemical restraint, and that's made clear in that decision-making tool. So just because someone says, well, that has a side effect of making someone more, more passive or less active, doesn't mean it is actually a form of restraint. So I'd just be prepared to challenge the agency, for example, if that was put forward, as because we certainly have and won on those points. So again, in the decision-making tool, it makes it perfectly clear that provided it's prescribed to treat a condition, the fact that it has those side effects does not make it a form of chemical restraint. It's really only where it's given to the person to stop them wandering or having those challenging behaviours. But yes.